At their wedding, the groom told the bride that he wasn't sure if he wanted to marry her and was uncertain about their future together. My childhood friend was getting married today to her high school sweetheart. The wedding was a long time coming. They've been together for 6.5 years and share a 2-year-old son together. They've been engaged for 3 years now because they delayed planning the wedding after she unexpectedly got pregnant with their son. So now the wedding was finally here earlier this year. She set a date and started planning. I was engaged myself this year and got married in July, and originally was just supposed to be a regular bridesmaid. The bride's sister was supposed to be the mo, but they had a falling out. Basically, the bride would always call her sister ranting about her fiancé every time they would fight, which caused the sister to form a pretty negative opinion of him. Sister lives across several states away and doesn't see everything that goes on here. Her mind jumped right to abuse, and she told the bride if she marries him, she's not coming to the wedding. Now here's the thing. Their relationship isn't perfect. They are young. They went through a lot very quickly, and very young, getting engaged, unexpected pregnancy, moving in together, all happened very fast. They fought a lot. I had my concerns at first. But after spending a lot more time with them, I saw how much they genuinely loved each other, parented their son together well, and were working towards a future together. The bride and I have been close friends for so much of our lives. She is like family to me. I care for her deeply. When she asked me to step in as Mo, I said yes for those reasons. Cut to today, the wedding day. Everything was going well. Groom was getting emotional when they did their private vows, and before walking down the aisle he was still wiping tears. It warmed my heart. Looking back now, I wonder what the heck was going through his head. Not sure they were tears of joy. As the night went on, the bride mingled and danced with her family. She had so much family that traveled from many states away to be here, and she wanted to be a good hostess to them. The groom was usually off talking with his own family when she was doing this, but for the most part they stayed together. They sat together, ate together, danced to a few songs, played the shoe game, then they were mingling separately with their families. Didn't think that was a big deal, as this is often how receptions go with so many people there pulling you in opposite directions. At one point they both went inside the venue. Reception was outside for a while, and then she came out alone. She continued to chat with family, and then after a little bit realized he was nowhere to be found. After a while of searching, we found him wandering around outside going for a walk. Bride was pretty distraught at this point. I will add that the groom did have a good amount to drink during the party. Apparently when they went inside the venue, he was angry at her for not spending enough time with him during the party, and said they were hardly together the whole night. Once he got back from his little walk, they were just arguing inside their room, I guess. At this point a lot of guests were leaving, and the ones left, me, my husband, the rest of the wedding party, and their immediate families didn't really know what to do. We were supposed to do a big send-off for them, so we were just kind of waiting for that. We packed up all the stuff, broke down all the tables and chairs, loaded it in cars, and just waited. Me and the other bridesmaids pulled her aside to talk to her. But she was pretty deflated at this point. Apparently the groom had taken his ring off and told her he wasn't sure he wanted to be married to her. At their wedding. Mind you, they've been living together for 3 years. They share a child. They've been dating since 2018. Nothing about this was rushed other than maybe their ages. They are quite young. But I never thought of them as immature until this stunt he pulled at their wedding. Over not spending enough time together at the reception. Like, sorry, why not just not leave her side then? I just don't understand at all. We finally decided to just load their stuff in their car and tell them it's all loaded and they should probably go ahead and go to get some sleep before their flight tomorrow. At the car we hugged goodbye and I left to come home. This girl is one of my absolute best friends. I hate that her beautiful wedding was ruined by her husband being petty and stubborn. She was in tears and distraught on her own wedding day. It's just awful. I don't really know where to go from here, if this is at all normal and something they will get past, or if this is more serious. I genuinely am rooting for them, but this whole situation just has me sitting in my car feeling confused and worried for my friend. They're leaving for their honeymoon tomorrow. Don't feel like it's an appropriate time to reach out and try to talk to her about all of this. Any advice is appreciated, I guess. I'm thinking I check in via text a few times while they're traveling on the honeymoon and make sure it's going okay, and make plans to see her when she gets back, and we can debrief everything then if she wants to get into it. Comments. Comment 1. How the main takeaway is don't drink too much at your wedding. People get wasted on their wedding day and don't take their ring off and say they shouldn't be married. I would say that's far more frequent than whatever this is. Comment 2. Oop, really bending over backwards to try to gaslight Reddit into thinking this isn't a fucked up relationship that will crash and burn within the next 3 years max. Girl. The bride and the groom shouldn't have gotten married if they don't even like each other that much. She keeps bitching about him to her family. And then apparently ignored him the whole fucking time during their wedding. He seems incapable of expressing his feelings about her. And probably feels obligated to marry her because they have a kid together. They should have taken things slow and figured out co-parenting first or something. Also, I would bet that this is all small-town drama and Oop is similarly engaged to her first ever boyfriend who she met in first grade or something. Update. It's been a week now, and a lot of people asked for an update. Some people on my original post were very adamant this relationship was abusive, citing red flags, research evidence, and personal anecdotes that this story reminded you of. There were also several comments saying I was overreacting. The groom was just drunk, and they will probably be fine. I wanted to clarify some things from my original post. While my friend the bride does have her sister, she was the only child growing up in her house. In many ways she truly is an only child. She is at least the only child of her mother. She already had a small circle, her family lives all over the country, and is not involved very much in her life that was not the groom's doing. He did not isolate her. Secondly, I would like to clarify their ages because I didn't mention them in my last post. They started dating at 15F and 16M, and got married at 21 and 22. Part of the reason I omitted it originally is because I didn't want people jumping to conclusions about their relationship. Because of their ages, there is a lot of stigma around getting married young, especially on Reddit. And I get it. The odds are stacked against you. That's why I decided to put their ages in now, because I realize it's important to understand they really do have so much growing and learning to do still. Now onto the update. It's pretty short. She Snapchatted me later that night after they got to their hotel and said as he began to sober up, he was realizing all that he ruined, and was very apologetic. He realized they didn't get to do their last dance, their send-off, the bouquet and garter toss. She said he was crying. They talked it all out as she said it sucks that their wedding ended that way. But it was amazing up to that point. And the important thing is that they're married and going to spend the rest of their lives together. She said they're going to work past it. And I asked how. Do you have a plan? Just want to be sure. She said they will work on their communication skills and I once again recommended therapy. She said they'd talk about it and consider it. Then they were off on their honeymoon, and seemed to be having a great time. I've checked in a bit when she has Snapchatted me some pics and they're doing well. She knows she can always come to me, and she knows I'll support her no matter what. Right now I'm going to do everything I can to help uplift them as a couple and help them form some better communication habits. Her sister didn't support her choice to stay with him. And that's why sister is not in her life anymore. I don't want that. I will support her choice. Period. Now, for the next story. My daughter banned me from her wedding, so I secretly canceled the entire event I paid for. It's absolutely true that no one can harm you more than your own children. My circumstances are identical. Ava, my 27-year-old daughter, forbade me from going to her wedding. For the past week, I've been drinking and pouting. Her wedding, which I financed, was scheduled for yesterday. Yes, it was a wedding present that I was paying for. Ava was a challenging youngster. When she told me about her wedding preparations, I was relieved that she was finally getting married to someone she loved because I had a lot of nightmares while raising her. I helped since she and her fiancé were struggling financially and couldn't plan a good wedding. What do I receive in exchange? I was not allowed to go. The devastation is beyond words. I added my brother to the guest list by calling the wedding planner a few days ago. The guest list was full, he claimed. To see if we could arrange anything, I requested him to email me the whole guest list. He said that Ava had told him to keep the guest list private. I informed him that since I was her father and the one covering the wedding expenses, they had best follow my instructions. Despite his reluctance, he sent me the list when I threatened to call his boss. My heart sank when I saw that. I wasn't on it with my wife. Since neither my wife's nor my name was listed, I called the wedding coordinator once more and insisted there must have been an error. He clarified that he had been expressly instructed not to mention our names. Until he shared the email exchange between him and Ava, I couldn't believe it. They were told to prevent us from entering the venue, which made the situation worse. How devastating must that have been? Although I was aware of my daughter's animosity toward me, I never would have guessed that it would reach a level where she would not let me attend her wedding. She was at her bachelorette party that day, so when I frantically called her, her phone was on voicemail. She didn't call that day or the following, despite my message requesting her to do so. I arrived at her flat, where she and her fiancé were residing, on the third day, right before the wedding. She said that she was too busy getting ready for her wedding to meet with me. She was avoiding me since, by that point, the wedding planner had informed her that I was aware of the guest list. I went there to ask her a question, but her demeanor simply made me more irate. I informed her that I was aware that she had prevented me from going to the wedding. "Well, good for you," was her response. "Traveling to the location saved you time and effort. If I have time, I will forward the wedding photos." I went utterly insane. This was all there was. No explanation, no regret, no apology. Her cruelty made me cry. Tears filled my eyes as I questioned what I had done wrong to merit this. She said that I had always mistreated her, first by slapping a stepmother in her face and then by siding with other people. Even when she was at fault, she wanted me to stand up for her without reservation. When she harassed my sister's daughter, how could I stand up for her? When she was discovered using pills in class, I did defend her and prevented her from getting expelled. I helped her get into college. But she decided to remain unappreciative in spite of everything I accomplished. She accused me of generating negativity in her home when she noticed me crying. I reminded her that her wedding was being paid for by me. She became hostile and claimed that I owed her this and that I wasn't doing her any favors. I went crazy and told her that I owed her nothing. This wedding was a favor and I had done more than enough. She said she didn't have time for my emotional drama and asked me to go. When I got home, I sobbed uncontrollably in front of my wife, Mercy, who is Ava's stepmother. Mercy is a good-hearted and forgiving lady, yet she became enraged for the first time when she witnessed me cry. She urged me to do something about Ava. "We must stop Ava from feeling entitled to harm us," she continued. Up until a year ago, when she eventually found a respectable job, Ava had been surviving off of my money. She didn't have any money saved for her wedding because of this. I'd had enough. I made the decision to discipline her. I called off all of the wedding plans. I didn't care that I hardly received any money back from the advance payments. I wanted to cancel the wedding planner as well as the wedding location, but I knew that would notify Ava, who could then make other arrangements. I intended to spoil her special day. I allowed her to keep her dress since she already had it. All of this made me feel bad, but after giving it some thought, I knew I had done more than enough for her. Why should I feel bad about interrupting her wedding if she didn't? When the wedding coordinator and the caterers and decorators showed up at the location on the wedding day, they were turned away. When the security showed them the cancellation email, it sparked a flurry of activity. When the wedding planner called to ask for the last payment, I informed them that I was no longer concerned and that they could speak with Ava about it. They informed me that when the venue guards denied Ava access, she got into a fight with them. Her fiancé saved her just in time after she nearly got arrested for trespassing. I had blocked her number when she attempted to contact me. I had denied her entry to the main gate when she arrived at my property. I desired tranquility, but I wasn't scared of her. Talking was pointless since, like she did when I visited her home, her comments would just make me feel worse. She needed to take responsibility for her conduct. She could no longer be repeatedly forgiven as a child. Ava just wanted her friends to attend her wedding, not family. I honored her decision. Fortunately, she had to deal with her friends about the wedding cancellation, so I didn't have to tell them. My parents were the only ones who weren't thrilled with what I accomplished. They said that regardless of how terrible our kids are to us, we should never treat them cruelly. I informed them that Ava was the cause of this. All her life, she had been cruel and egotistical. No matter how hard I try to defend what I did, the guilt still remains. I pretend to be brave, but I secretly regret calling off my own daughter's wedding. My heart has been relieved by writing this down, even if I have no idea why I'm here. Update 1. I appreciate all of your moral support. I didn't think my acts would be praised by others. I was afraid I would be considered a fool for taking such a harsh stance against my own daughter. A few of you inquired as to Ava's history of animosity toward us. I apologize for missing that previously. Here are the specifics. I had no idea how this format operated. My second wife is Mercy, a 45-year-old woman. My kid from my first marriage is named Ava. When Ava was 7 years old, I divorced her mother, my first wife. Ava's mother left me for him after finding someone else. I was granted custody of Ava because they were leaving for Europe and didn't want her. When Ava was 13, I remarried Mercy, and ever since, Mercy and I have had to deal with Ava's anger. Mercy is the object of her intense hatred. When she was a teenager, it made sense. It must have been difficult to watch someone take her mother's place. Mercy, a certified children's counselor and teacher, reassured me that Ava would be all right as an adult. She thought Ava would view me as more than simply her father. She would see me as a person in need of a companion. 5 years after the divorce, I got married in the hopes that Ava would value the fact that I had raised her by myself over those 5 years. Ava was disliked by both her mother and her new spouse. Regretfully, Ava showed absolutely no gratitude. Rather, Ava became increasingly hostile toward Mercy and me. In the hopes that Ava would find friendship there, I had to send her to live with my sister, who had a daughter of the same age, because things had gotten so horrible. After a few months of smooth sailing, my sister gave up less than a year later. Since it was their last year of school, my sister didn't want her daughter's grades to suffer as a result of the petty arguments that Ava and her daughter had, she informed me. I had to return Ava as a result. Ava lived with us until she graduated from high school, although she would spend her breaks with my parents. She eventually declared that she would complete her high school education while residing with them and refused to return home. I made arrangements for carpooling because my parents' residence was far from her school. As long as she was content and peaceful, that arrangement lasted. But her high school grades were terrible when they were released. At that point, I discovered that she had joined the wrong crowd, students who were doing drugs. She wanted to live with my parents because she had a nasty boyfriend. After they went to bed, she would slip out and tour the city until after midnight. Her senior year of high school had to be repeated. Another nightmare was getting her through college. She wouldn't have been accepted any place else due to her bad grades and depressing attitude, so thank God I had some contacts who helped her get a spot at a respectable college. She once again surrounded herself with the wrong crowd and used drugs while she was a college student. She had to go to rehab because things got so out of hand. She finally graduated at age 25, but she had a relapse the year after, so I had to send her back to treatment for a few months. She truly has been a pain in the butt, so calling her such wouldn't be impolite. She has continuously caused me distress, embarrassment, and misery. I'm so grateful for Mercy, my understanding wife. She could have talked me out of leaving Ava if she had been any other lady, but instead she was the one who continually urged me to wait. Mercy has given so much of herself for Ava and me, and I'm so grateful for it. The fact that I got married again, and Mercy even more so, seems to be Ava's biggest grievance. Mercy isn't Native American, you see. The Middle East was the birthplace of her family. Her parents, who were immigrants in the United States, were unable to support their 5 children, so she grew up in an NGO. They came to the United States with nothing after fleeing a war-torn area. I was drawn to Mercy for that reason. Despite having a difficult upbringing and little money, she persevered, obtained a master's degree, found a lucrative teaching position, and established a successful life for herself. Despite being a self-made woman, Ava refers to her as a gold digger. Yes, we have some generational riches because my family has had a successful export company for 2 generations. Since this is my second marriage and her first, Ava thinks Mercy married me for financial gain. Ava argues that if it weren't for financial gain, Mercy wouldn't have married a single father who was 12 years her senior. Mercy is 45 and I'm 57. I don't know who gave Ava these thoughts, but that's why she called Mercy a gold digger. A few of you also inquired as to whether Ava's mother had anything to do with this. In actuality, she hasn't gotten in touch with either Ava or myself since our divorce. All I know is that she was in Germany when I last heard from her. Regarding the present circumstance, Ava attempted to vent her rage by contacting me after I called off her wedding, but I prohibited her from doing so on any platform. When I called off the wedding, my parents were upset and offered to cover the costs if Ava wanted to reschedule. However, Ava betrayed them, saying they were supporting me. Using harsh language, she even threw them out of her house and told them not to come again. Although her teacher, who also happened to attend the same gym as me, was the one who discovered her high school substance use, she blames them for it. Following this, my parents had a change of heart and accepted my decision to call off the wedding. I can't give Ava the right to take advantage of and harm us whatever she pleases. I still haven't heard from her, so I have no idea what she's up to. 10 days after her alleged wedding day, my parents paid her a visit 2 days ago. They are still not married. They're probably arranging a new date or simply haven't followed through. Oh, and I blocked the credit card I was using to make the purchase. She still had access to it, but she hadn't used it much since landing her job. She will probably be upset by this, but I don't care anymore. I don't feel guilty now that I know how she treated my parents. They have always cherished and protected her, and they are in their late 70s. It was right to cut Ava off. Update 2. Hello everyone. Although it has been more than a year since I last updated this topic, I have remained in close contact with all of the people who PM'd me or left comments on the post. A few weeks later, I learned that Ava had married her fiancé in a secret ceremony attended only by their closest friends. I wished her luck in life and was pleased for her. I had no social media connection to her, so I had no idea what was going on in her life. My niece informed me that Ava had changed her Facebook status to reflect her and her husband's move to a nearby city. Before I received a call from an unknown number a week ago, everything in my life was going according to plan. It was Matt, Ava's husband. I was anxious, fearing that she might have suffered some sort of mishap. She wanted to meet me in person, which surprised me, but he reassured me that she was okay. He claimed he would explain when we met when I asked why. He proposed getting together for supper and said he was in town. In my heart, I hoped that this would be an opportunity to make amends with Ava. I believed that Matt was serving as a go-between and that she might be too embarrassed to approach me. I went to see him with great expectations, but to my disappointment, Matt arrived by himself. He said he had no idea where Ava was when I inquired about her. With a sinking heart, I inquired as to her whereabouts. Then he disclosed that they were no longer together. According to Matt, Ava had a history of abuse during their marriage and had a serious problem with anger management. Even over small disagreements, she would hurl objects and smash household objects. For as long as he could, he put up with it, but eventually it got to be too much, and they split up. Matt continued by saying that Ava had psychological problems and attributed any problems she encountered to other people. Because they had relocated to a new city for his work, she and he had many arguments. Ava was angry at him for removing her from her hometown, even though she had secured a comparable well-paying position there. That was only one of their numerous problems. Matt stated he wanted to apologize face-to-face. He acknowledged that he had seen Ava treat me, Mercy, and my parents cruelly, but he chose not to step in since Ava had used him against us all. He felt bad for ignoring the warning signs and causing himself suffering. I informed him that Ava was to blame and that he was not. I held myself partially responsible for not raising her well. I also expressed my regret to him for what he had endured with Ava. Then Matt asked me to do him a favor. He claimed that Ava was pleading with him to take her back since she had been upset by the breakup. But after experiencing her mistreatment, he had lost interest in her. He nevertheless sent her warm wishes and asked if I could help her during this trying period. Because of her rage, Ava had lost all of her true friends and Matt felt I could help her by taking her to therapy. I informed him that although I hoped I could, Ava would not allow me to be close to her. He got it, and we both said we wanted to help Ava if she would let us. I made the decision to go see Ava after that talk. Unfortunately, things didn't work out as planned. She attacked Mercy and me, but I had come by myself so Mercy wouldn't see Ava's anger. In an attempt to soothe her, I apologized. Right or wrong didn't matter to me at the time. I just wanted to assist her. I advised her to see a therapist first, but otherwise, she could say anything she wanted about me. Ava brought up the past without listening. She screamed that she wanted to kill Mercy because she detested her so much. She acknowledged that she was embarrassed by our marriage and embarrassed to introduce Mercy as her stepmother, which is why she had barred us from attending her wedding. She threw me out of the house when I tried to talk sense into her, accusing me of being the cause of all her issues. To be honest, I don't care anymore, and I'm not sure if I was correct or not. I don't know how to help her, but all I want is for her to recover. Update 3. I appreciate all of your moral support. When I created the last update, I was pretty upset, and this place has truly helped me relax. Mercy advised me to get in touch with Ava's school closest buddy. We knew each other well because her family lived next door. I messaged her on social media to explain the situation because she now resides in South Africa. Since she was the only person Ava had never battled with, I requested her to get in touch with Ava in the hopes that she could get through to her. Her buddy promised to assist, and happily she did. Ava committed to therapy, and I think it's going well because she came to see my parents a week ago and expressed regret for her actions. She acknowledged that she was no longer able to contain her hatred because it had become so strong. She still holds me responsible for everything though, and stated that she would never forgive me. I no longer harbor any animosity toward her. Even though I'm not involved, I simply hope she has a happy life. I appreciate your support, everyone. I sincerely hope that no father ever has to deal with their own child's intense hatred. I sincerely appreciate you staying until the very end. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you truly enjoy our videos. Enjoy your wonderful day. Now, for the next story. Ada for confronting my parents and exposing them after they forgot about Maine at their wedding. I know this seems like a weird situation, but I just feel so angry and depressed that I feel the need to vent, even if no one is listening. So a 17 female was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad 50 male proposed to my mother 49 female on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister, even tough they were already together before everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on, on a small event in Hawaii with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately my mother asked my sister 25 female to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother 22 male to be his groomsmen. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other shopping and socializing, so they had a very close bond, and the same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself on my family's hobbies and groups that they had within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest on their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro. My parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, initially it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, 3 female, so that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little bit of a speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party or have any role at all in the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up on all the wedding planning. I noticed my mom didn't invite me dress shopping, and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out, so I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all, and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me something about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago, the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready, because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second, and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket, and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without unstable income, I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and a couple other friends that were attending the wedding but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it, and that they can just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline, but I just replied by asking her, then what? Do I even have a dress for the ceremony? She went with sis to buy hers and all the other female guests months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and just told me to suck it up and that I've never been a girly girl, so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because, even though I'm not the most feminine girl on the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding, and it was about the fact that I was excluded for literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight with them, calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me like that as a valid excuse for ignoring a child. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant fine and went to my room. Next morning they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Instagram and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was being. People realized quickly that I wasn't in any of the photos, and asked my parents why, to which they replied that unfortunately I had caught COVID before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel back for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test and captioned it, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone that had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture, and, for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before parting, and how they actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side and others couldn't believe it, and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying, but one thing is for certain, I completely ruined my parents' wedding, and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up on my own, but after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later, when they came back, them furiously attacking me for my immature actions and my spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly. And I began to feel awful. I hate my family, and I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better though. And now I feel so depressed that I'm second-guessing everything I did, from not speaking up before to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me, and maybe I could have done more. So Ada for ruining my parents' wedding when they forgot about me. Comments. Comment 1. This ought to be the plot for Home Alone's 6 Hawaiian Wedding. Because only in a movie could you unintentionally screw up travel plans so royally that you don't realize your minor child doesn't have a ticket to your destination wedding. In real life, the only way you could forget to buy your minor child a ticket, it's just because you're a hateful asshole. I'm glad Oop publicly posted that they left her behind, and that the parents are suffering socially as a result. Comment 2. I really can't understand why parents are like this to some of their children. Are they annoyed because the child isn't like them? Is it sexism? What is it? Why do people procreate if they only hate their children? I hope Oop gets better and finds a good therapist to work through all that. I wish her a beautiful and bountiful life. Update 1. First of all, let me start by thanking all that commented on my post and shared their own experiences or points of view on my situation. Thank you so much. A few days ago I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for all that had passed, but after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting the feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think on how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. Just to clarify a point before going on, I said this in the comments, but I feel like I should put it here also. My grandma 77F did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving to me and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism, but it's hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far. And I am always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. She had a minor stroke a few years back and is now back to normal, but I still worry. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible, that they had forgotten, and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, laying out how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me, and told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100%, and told me to take it easy but make plans for my future, and that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and start moving to figure something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so that's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily, and that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted, and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position. And we had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So this all happened a couple days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then, but my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterwards with a half-hearted apology saying that he didn't know I wasn't included, and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip, and then I posted the pic just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make public my own problems and pinning them on my family when they are all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip, and at first they berated me and were furious with me, and after that we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, they came into my room telling me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest I should shut up about it, and that this could all had already blown over if only I had kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her, and I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane, so I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay. But she wouldn't listen and told me that she was long overdue a conversation with my parents, and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long uncomfortable trip because of me, and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my Uncle Mom's older brother is coming with her. But I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or nothing happens to her, because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow, and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it until she gets here. I hope she is able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions. Or, at the very least, help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon, and I plan on being no contact with them. I don't know. I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Update 2. I'm just going to continue where I left off. So my grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a very hard time traveling, so for her to take this trip meant that she would be under enormous stress, and I felt responsible for her since I was the one that called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle and I went to get her at the airport. Angela was a very intense and emotional moment, and as soon as I saw her I ran to her arms and broke down sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment, because of how hard I was crying, and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming. For being so good to me. For having my back. I'm sorry to have made you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I truly was hit with all of this plus the guilt and the anxiety all at once when I saw her, but she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days. And once they were settled in and I was more calm, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and the emotional abuse. How I was feeling miserable after the trip, but also for years now. How my parents have been trying to make me feel guilty for all of this that has happened. How I was scared about my future, but my N.1 priority at the moment now was to move out of that house even at the expense of my schoolwork. How I have made arrangements to move in with my friend and I was looking for a job. And I told them about this post, and how some people thought I might be an affair child, and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe to open up to them. After I unloaded all my concerns with them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore, and that she would be here for me always. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me, and that she knew the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating, and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 to 4 years old, when my parents were constantly complaining about having a young kid in the house, and they were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their stuff, but not me, and I was also very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience with, and made me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew that my parents had saved more than enough for my college. They're really well off, so that had never been a concern for me, until now, thinking they might pull the funds away from me for my education, but that if they tried to not pay for my schooling she would take care of it, and that she just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also told me she would help me with rent and an allowance to move out. She was very generous and I thanked her for it all. But I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me, money-wise. All my life I went to private school. I have a rather large monthly allowance. I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far, and how being dependable on them all my life made me so exposed to losing everything, and I want to be independent now, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand up on my own. Writing this and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life, tbh. She insisted on me accepting my help until I don't need it anymore. And I accepted that. But I'll still will look for a job and try to make it out on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel because we were all exhausted from the morning, but in the afternoon we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door, but before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs and I could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for all that they had put me through. At first I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually they quieted down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases, and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red and my mother was sobbing like a child. And when she saw me, she extended her arms on my direction, saying she was sorry, but I just said, "Save it," with the coldest tone I could muster, and my dad said that I didn't have to be jerk. To which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them, and that they told her my college tuition was never in question for them, and that they had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess, and were going to be giving me a car as an apology for everything. But my grandma was having none of that BS, because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face and they were coming up with these things on the fly, and that a party and a car would not make up for all that they have put me through. Apparently the moment that broke my mother was when she told her that I had even questioned my paternity, and she started crying. But my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had excluded me repeatedly from all family events since I was a child. She told me that she would make sure they made the payments to my school, unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them, and have her pay until I can pay myself, and I asked her to do that. I felt bad because I feel like it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. And, although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents. But she reassured me that everything is all right, and that everything going to me would be taken away from my mom's inheritance. So the next day we went with my friend, her parents and grandma to the studio where we were planning to move, and immediately upon arriving my grandma said absolutely not. I knew from pictures that the studio was very, very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette, and there was also rust in the little old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but I figured I could live with that, at least for a while. But the thing that the adults pointed out that actually made me and my friend change our minds was the fact that this studio was street level in a bad neighborhood, in a building that didn't seem particularly safe, and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even know what those were until my friend's dad pointed it out. So grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location, and they'd help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realize that with our most likely minimum wage jobs in such a high demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. So the plan is we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and me and my friend are going to pay what we had previously planned for the studio, and her parents and my grandma will cover the difference. I know it's still quite spoiled of me to expect that help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, to which I'm extremely grateful, since grandma is going back in a couple of days, and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to make sure I had some safe place to stay until we move into the apartment, which is still to be found. I teared up a little as I thanked them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then I've been moving some of the stuff I had left at my parents' and setting my space in my friends. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back, and even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess, and that I was a DK for what I had done, but before she could say anything else I hanged up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for all that he has done to me, and for not realizing our parents were treating me so poorly. He says he's been doing a lot of self-reflection on the days since grandma called, and realized that he had been in the wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip, because I wouldn't want to go, and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply thanking him for his words, but telling him I need space and I was not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine, because he has never been nasty to me the way my sister has, just aloof towards me, but I also feel like I need to keep him away for the moment. Also, keeping a bridge up with my family feels like the right thing to do right now that everything is so fresh. Maybe in the future he will show me he's just as nasty as everyone else and I'd block him. But as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off completely. I've also made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and I have my first preliminary visit next week, again funded by my grandma, which makes me feel ever more eager to find a job ASAP to take the burden off of her, even if she tells me time and time again she is happy to do all of this for me. That's where things stand right now. I don't know if I'll update again. Maybe when I start classes or move to the apartment, but right now I'm just trying to enjoy some time with my grandma and my uncle, and learn to grow and get rid of these feelings of guilt and depression that have been plaguing me for so long. I want to thank once again all of this community for being so nice and helpful to me, and all of you who have messaged me with your own personal stories of getting kicked out, or having to learn how to make it on your own at a too early age. You've helped me feel a lot less alone, and made me realize that things can get better if I work hard for it. I feel kind of spoiled for having such an amazing support system on my grandma, uncles, and my friend, but you all guys are right. Reaching out has been the absolute best decision I could have taken, and opening up about my feelings to those who love me, and to all of you internet friends, has absolutely saved me, so thank you. Really, I'm more grateful than words can ever tell. Update 3. Where I left, I moved to my friend's house after my grandma visited me, and we were able to stand up against my neglectful parents. My grandma and uncle left just a couple of days after I published my last update, and it was a very emotional moment for us both. For the first time in my life, I felt protected and loved with someone in my family. I'm sure throughout my life there must have been moments where I didn't feel so down and alone, but that week I spent with Grandma, I truly felt like someone was in my corner unconditionally, and I'll be forever grateful to her for being there for me. After she left back to her hometown, I got settled in my friend's parents' home while we looked for an apartment. She was already working as a private tutor for young kids, and she helped me get the same job as her, so now we are also co-workers. The job is great, and the salary is quite nice for a first job, so I was over the moon to be hired. We also found an apartment. Is near campus, has 2 bedrooms and a nice living area and kitchen. It's not big, but it's clean and in a neighborhood that is primarily college students living in it, so it's quite nice and there's plenty of cool spaces to hang and meet people. We're actually just in the process of moving right now, and I'm writing this update from my new bedroom. I celebrated my 18th birthday a couple of weeks ago, and it was great. I went to a restaurant with a few friends and had a nice time. The only drama there's been so far with my parents since the whole debacle is that they showed up in my friend's home the day of my birthday, asking to see me. I wasn't there at the time, but my friend's dad was, and he told me that they were both very apologetic and asked him to get me in contact with them. They left a letter with him in which they basically acknowledge that they have been awful parents, but they want to rectify their mistakes and beg me to talk to them. Maybe I'm cold for doing what I did next, but I decided not to answer them in any way, and asked my friend's dad to tell them to leave if they ever show up, which he respected. A part of me wanted to go to them and try to mend our relationship, but I also felt like it had taken all of this effort for me, just to show them I exist, and how much they've hurt me through my life, and if I go back now, I'll be betraying myself and all the work I'm putting on growing and becoming an independent person. After my birthday, I had a couple of weeks before we could start moving into the new apartment, so I went to visit my grandma at her house. I showed her the many pictures I took of the new apartment, told her all about my new job and the classes I'm about to start after New Year's, and she was so happy for me. We had a family get-together to celebrate my birthday too, and my uncles and cousins came to Grandma's where we had a bit of a party. My brother also came. I've slowly been talking more and more with my brother. Of all my immediate family, he is the only one that has never treated me badly, and, although he was neglectful towards me, and enjoyed my parents' favoritism, he never treated me bad, and I feel like he was also a victim of the toxic environment that was our house. I don't trust him fully, but he has apologized very sincerely, and, since he lives near me, he wants me to feel like I can rely on him if I ever need something. I do feel safer knowing that I got at least one family member in my city that is worried about me and would help me if needed be. I asked him once how my parents were doing, and he told me that, ever since I left, he himself has limited a lot contact with them, and he blames them for the whole situation, whereas my sister insists that I'm being selfish and causing pain on my parents. Because I'm the problem, not sure how that works. My parents also seem to have been somewhat ostracized by many of their friends after news of what happened to me got out, but according to my brother, they are constantly asking for me, and are now saying to anyone that might listen that they fucked up and don't blame me for my actions, but they want to rectify their mistakes. I don't know if I buy this act, and I feel like they know that now the best thing they can do for their reputation is to try and put the ball on my court in regards to reconciliation so that they can look like they've done their part. I'm now more than ever focused on my future, and I don't really want to think of them. I go to therapy, and I'm trying to grow and embrace the love of my newfound support system, my friend, her family, my grandma, my uncles and cousins, and maybe my brother. I hope this will be my last update since I want to close this chapter of my life. And if I'm ever back here, it will probably mean something has happened, but I wanted to share the good news with all of you, because you truly saved my life in a desperate moment. I was so down those days after the wedding, I felt like curling up on my bed and try to disappear, but you all helped me pull myself up and face the music, and I'm now so much happier than I think I've ever been. And I'm looking forward to all the wonderful things that are happening in my life, so thanks to all of you. Now, for the next story. Ada for refusing to kick out my roommate just because my girlfriend suspects he might be trans? I, 22 male, have a roommate, let's call him Alex, male 23, who moved in about 6 months ago. I honestly never considered Alex may be trans. Not that I would care if he was, but that's not the issue. He is a short guy and probably under 165 cm 5A, has a lot of facial hair, muscles, and looks a lot like a short Henry Cavill emo. No one I know has ever brought up this idea before. I've had my friends and family at our apartment before. This is really the part that gets to me because my mom is extremely against any gay people, and if she sensed anything was up, she would have caused problems right away. Alex and I get along, We're polite but not really friends. He's quiet but super polite, always pays rent on time, helps with chores, and even shares his cooking with me. I appreciate having him around, especially because my last 3 roommates were each their own horror story. The issue came up when my girlfriend, let's call her Sarah F28, came over one day. Alex was shirtless. To clarify, I forgot to tell Alex that she was coming over, and she noticed the scars on his chest. After that, she was quiet and short with me her entire stay there. When she got home, she blew up my phone, asking why I had a female living with me. I was confused and asked what she was on about. She says that she knows that his scars are from top surgery, and that he is short, so he has to be trans, and a born female. I tried to explain that even if Alex is trans or a born female, that there is no way I'd be attracted to him, because to any person who looked at him, you would see a freaking guy. Plus he's respectful, and doesn't cause drama like my last roommates, which she knows about. Just to be clear, I honestly still have no idea if Alex is even trans. I googled it, and those scars could be from some other surgery, like heart surgery or gynecomastia. And I really don't have an argument for him being short, but there is a lot of short men. At first Sarah wanted me to just ask Alex if he was trans, which why the fuck would I do that? Or give her his last name so she can run a background check. I said no to both. Then she said this was a violation of trust, and that if I didn't either find out that Alex is trans and kick him out, or just kick him out, that she would have to reevaluate things. Basically threatening to break up. I said I don't do ultimatums and that we're done. Since then she's been messaging me every single day for over 2 weeks, even after I blocked her on everything because she wouldn't leave me alone, pissed that I wouldn't do this small thing for her. She ranges from, "Are you fucking him? Let's just talk. Why can't you at least give me closure?" and ask him, to the most recent her, telling our mutual friend about the situation. Our friend wants nothing a part of this shit show. I didn't feel bad at first, but after talking about it online, I've had some people say I should have just asked my roommate if he was indeed trans just to keep the peace. Or that I shouldn't have essentially picked my roommate who I've only had for about 6 months over my girlfriend of 5 years. I wonder if I am being unreasonable. I legitimately do not see how any straight dude could find Alex attractive, personally, but maybe I should have done something just to keep the peace. Comments. Comment 1. Honestly, thank God Op ended up rooming with Alex. There was so much more than transphobia coming to light here. Alex was just the catalyst for Op's escape. Comment 2. I feel that this is not yet over. Sarah is an abusive shithead who also happens to be a transphobe, and she probably groomed Oop. She's not going to let him get out of her clutches that easily. Update 1. I was 17 and she was 22/23 when we got together. It's been a long time, so I'd have to look back to make sure. But yeah, I was for sure 17. We got together the day I turned 17, our anniversary is my birthday. We couldn't get together before then because of the age of consent in my state, which I get now is really fucked up. I don't know if it helps, but we have known each other our entire lives. My mom is her mom's best friend. When my mom worked, I would go over to Sarah's mom's house so I wasn't alone. We started talking and flirting when I was about 15 or 16, but didn't cross any physical lines until I turned 17, because I didn't want her to get arrested. I get that sounds bad. I really do. But at the time I didn't see it as bad. Just in case it is asked, our moms encouraged it. Why would you want to be with someone like that? I don't. I really don't. I didn't realize it was transphobia until some people here talked to me about it. I thought it was just her being jealous. But I get how fucked up it is now. Please understand I live in the Bible Belt. I didn't even know trans people existed until I was 16. My personal thoughts is that I don't see a problem with people being trans and transitioning. I think at the end of the day it isn't my business. Is Alex trans? I have no clue. He could be, but he could have also had breast cancer, gyno, heart, lung, or any kind of other surgery. I used a photo from Google Reddit because this whole time I personally thought he had gyno or something. But it's not my business. Is Alex safe? I'll talk to him when I get home and then talk to my landlord. I will change my gate code and also have her removed from the allowed guests list, and also ask my landlord to not let her in personally. She hasn't been too violent of a person in the past, but I also didn't know she was this insane in the past either. Was there abuse? I feel like this has been kinda implied in some questions. I don't know. Has she insulted me? Yes. Has she been physical? Yes. But nothing crazy. Slapping, pushing, shoving, but never anything like punching or drawing blood. Why use CM if you're American? I was born and raised American. However, I got a couple of friends who use Metric from college, and after sharing a group chat with them for so long, the habit has stuck. If anyone cares, we're in automotive engineering. The photo? The photo is not actually Alex. I searched Google for gynosurgery photos and then found a Reddit post talking about it. I used it as a reference for what I mean. Scarring under the chest and around the nipple area. I definitely wouldn't actually post a photo of Alex here, censored or not. I'm sorry for confusion. Why didn't you ask Alex about his scars? I have a few reasons. I personally wouldn't like it if someone asked me. Second, my mom has scars all around her body for different reasons, and gets livid if you ask her about them. Third, probably the one that confuses people the most. I didn't really care enough to ask. I was curious but not I just thought and then went on with my business. Update 2. I talked to Alex. I got advice saying to be upfront and tell him what's up completely, hide the trans part, and that I just shouldn't tell him. I don't know if this was the right thing, but I just told him. Because once I was face to face with him, I couldn't really help but do it. To clarify, I did not ask him about his scars or mention that specifically. I said my ex-girlfriend was under the impression he was a trans person, made sure to say I didn't care if he was or wasn't, and that I broke things off, changed the gate codes, put her on the do not let in list, all that drama. Before even saying anything, he asked if I was okay. Like I said, he is a chill dude. He also not so subtly asked the same questions that a lot of comments asked, essentially if I was in an abusive situation. I told him I don't know, but whatever kind of situation it was, it's over. The thing that really kind of fucked with me is that he called me his best friend. I regret not saying we were close in other comments. I realize now we have different definitions of close because he is introverted, and I'm not. We talked about irrelevant stuff for a while, and then the question came up, would you care if I was trans? To summarize things, yes. Alex is trans. Mask. He had top surgery when he was 19, and has been on hormones since he was 18. He even has a tattoo with the date he started testosterone. While the idea that he could have been a dude with gyno cancer or something else is completely reasonable, it just happens that Alex is trans. And I don't care about that. Alex is Alex. I did show him the post and got permission to update things. I would not have otherwise. He is also roaming this post somewhere, but probably won't comment. Notes. Alex is going to help me out with finding some low-cost or pay-scale therapy because he personally hasn't heard good things about the college's therapy services. Like everyone else has said, yes, it was abuse. I see that. I will also hold higher standards for myself in the future. Alex sent me the information for the therapist he sees, and I'll contact them in the morning. The landlord knows there is a domestic incident, and I trust him when it comes to making sure my ex doesn't show up. The do not allow list was made in mind for this reason. I am not ready to talk to my mom about this. But I hope with some therapy and time I will be. She knows something is going on, but she believes this is a break and not a breakup. Sorry if this sounds like rambling, it is. This has been a rough couple of weeks. My brain is fried and I'm tired. Keep in mind, I'm still a full-time student during this. I also have to keep my grades up for my grants, scholarships, government aid, etc. I do read all comments, even the not so good ones. I will try to respond more before I sleep tonight, but just know even if I don't reply, I have read it. I appreciate all the advice, kicks in the rear, and the sympathy. A side note. I have seen a lot of trans people comment on this post, and I have had a few reach out to me in private. I am thankful for your comments as well. It has brought to my attention how tough things are out there, because I honestly felt what I did was the bare minimum, and not worthy of praise, because it should just be expected. But I see that it is being praised for how low of a bar there is when it comes to human decency towards you. And I'm sorry for that, and hope things get better. Girlfriend of 5 years wanted me to kick out my chill roommate of 6 months because he is trans, which apparently means I'll sleep with him. Broke up with her, kept the roommate. Update 3. I talked to the therapist Alex recommended. Normally I would be on the wait list until January. But due to the situation, the therapist referred me to one of his associates, and I'll be seen as early as next week. I also was recommended to attend a domestic violence support group that gathers once a month. I was originally not going to go because the idea was uncomfortable as fuck. But Alex said he'll go with me, so at least I'll know someone there, and we can leave if it's too weird for me. My mom is aware of the breakup. She is not too happy. I did not mention the trans part. I said that Sarah was being controlling and I didn't want to put up with it anymore. Got the usual, that's a normal part of any relationship comments, but I stood my ground. My mom seems to be under the same delusion as Sarah that this is a small argument or something and we will get back together. But that is absolutely no happening. I don't really talk to Sarah's mom, so I don't know her thoughts on the matter. The landlord is aware of the situation and will not let Sarah in, should she try to show up. If you don't have the gate code, you have to go to the main office and the employee landlord's son will buzz the person in, if they are on your accepted people list, or call the tenant and ask if they aren't on the list. If the individual is on the do not let in list, especially if it involves a criminal matter, they will be asked to leave. If they don't leave, then it becomes trespassing. I know this sounds like a lot, but the security is why a lot of people live here. Notes after reading some comments. I am sorry for trivializing my abuse. It still feels weird to say abuse, but I do know that it is abuse. Slapping, pushing and shoving is physical abuse, and if another person came up and told me their partner was doing that, I would call it abuse. It's not that I don't think women can be abusive, but as I said in one of the comments, I don't view it as abuse when it's towards me. This is probably due to being abused by my mom, which I am going to get help for. For reference, when I mention my mom's abuse, it's why I'm low contact with her. The reason why I was extremely underweight as a kid is because she just straight up didn't feed me a lot of the time. CPS got called a lot, but never did anything. They also didn't take any claims by my teachers that I was being abused as creditable, because there were no marks or bruises, which has warped my view on abuse. Going forward, if I date again, then I won't put up with any physical or verbal abuse. A couple of comments helped by saying that if I was confused on if it was wrong, to think about if it was another person going through it. Which has been helpful in what I feel is right and wrong treatment towards me. After a lot of talking, it turns out Alex and I have been friends this whole time, but because I've never had an introvert friend before, I didn't exactly realize. Alex says he didn't want to annoy me by trying to chat with me all the time, which ironically is what I was feeling. Now we're going to hang out more, and he is trying to get me to join the DD game he is in. Thank you for reading my giant block of text. I'm on the app and I don't exactly know how to format. I'm grateful for all the comments, regardless if they are good or bad. I do read all of them. Now, for the next story. My husband has developed feelings for another woman and expressed a desire to explore polyamory. My husband fell sick and had to stay home for a while. He decided to pick up an online game and started having weekly sessions with a group of players. Among them is a girl 30, I think, and long story short, he fell in love with her. He broke down crying a month ago and admitted it. He told me it built up so gradually he didn't understand how he felt until it was too late. They started texting privately after meeting and eventually had one-on-one calls together. Then at some point he said, she told him she was in love with him and he realized it was mutual. He said he told her it was impossible but loved her too. They tried to be just friends but they couldn't resist. And continued to show affection for each other. He showed me the texts, but also venture into sexting. She asked if she could meet him face to face but he refused. So he told me all of this, apologized over and over again, and told me he couldn't control himself and while he loved us both, it was me he would choose no matter what. I was still very upset and slept at a friend's that night to gather my thoughts. I decided to forgive him because he clearly felt guilt and wanted to work it out. I told him that while I was deeply hurt, I still appreciated him coming forward to me and being honest about what happened. We got into long conversations about how we were feeling in our relationship. I accepted he could love someone else but said I didn't like how he handled it. He agreed. And then yesterday he asked if I was comfortable opening up the marriage to polyamory. He said he still wanted to live with me and have kids but can't erase nor ignore the feelings he has for her. He says he wants to do it right and let us both see other people, with clear boundaries and communication, and still be present for one another. I'm going to be honest, it made me very uncomfortable at first. We have several friends who are poly. I know more or less how it works. But I never really thought about getting into it myself. I am not against. It just never crossed my mind before. I am trying to think it through, but it's a lot to take in. Comments. Comment 1. I had an ex that did this exact thing. The ex told me I was bipolar and he recognized the signs because his mom and friend's brother had it. And he also told me all my friends were wrong and I needed to stop talking to them, because they didn't want us to succeed in our relationship. I was 18 and really didn't understand it was abusive. I always thought abuse was physical. So many triggers. Stay strong, oop. The weight lifted off is like the biggest breath of fresh air you'll breathe. Comment 2. The further updates make me wonder whether their poly friends actually suggested that the husband bring up polyamory with her, or if that was just a ploy to break her relationship with them. None of the poly people I know would respond to an emotional affair by saying, "Why don't you fix your cheating by opening your relationship?" Update 1. I told him his actions hurt me deeply, and that while I appreciated him admitting his affair, it was still infidelity. I told him what you guys said, that turning it into polyamory was merely greenlighting the affair after the fact. That polyamory should be built on mutual trust and communication, which he already broke. That I didn't feel respected. It destroyed him. He said he already knew deep down but didn't want to admit it, neither to me nor to himself. We both screamed and cried a lot. He finally admitted he wanted to open the marriage for selfish reasons. He is very sorry. He cut off contact with the other girl, let me fully access his computer and phone, and now wants to go to counseling to repair our relationship and marriage. He is showing me a lot of affection and attention since then, although he admits himself it's sometimes out of guilt, and not just out of pure love. And now I want to make it work too, but am I? Or is it sunk cost fallacy? I don't know. Our first session is in 2 months, the earliest we could get, and every day I change my mind. Literally yesterday I wanted to leave him, while today I think it's worth giving it a try. Because we've known each other for so long, we understand each other on a very deep level, share a lot of interests, and have already built so much together. He was there for me during hard parts of my life. He took responsibility for his actions and is really trying. Plus, if I leave him, I'd have to start my life nearly from scratch, find a new place to live, go back into dating for the first time in 12 years. I don't want to lose everything. It sounds very hard and scary. Am I not too old for this? But at the same time, that's a form of denial, isn't it? It doesn't matter if those years were good, it's not going to be the same. Even if he gains my trust back, even if I forgive him, I'll never forget. I think he is genuinely remorseful, but isn't it too late for that? I am too empathetic. Him being present now doesn't erase what was done. Do I want to stay, not because I still believe in this relationship, but because don't have the strength to ask for a divorce? Because it's the easy choice, some kind of codependency? I have no idea. I can picture both paths clearly, and it's tearing me apart. I am lost, maybe even more than I was when I wrote my previous post. I've lost sleep and appetite, and I'm not sure I enjoy anything in my life anymore. I booked an appointment with a psychologist, for me alone, to help with this whole thing. I am sorry at this point, I am rambling. I know I am the only one who can decide what's okay and comfortable for me or not. It's ultimately my choice and my choice and my choice only. The emotional hell I am going through just makes thinking about that choice very hard and paralyzing. I'll go to both therapies and try to see what to do from here. I'll try to update, but it's probably going to take a while. I am sorry. I want to thank you again for your support, and I am sending you guys a lot of love. Edit a couple of infos I should have mentioned but didn't, because putting all of that into writing without omitting something is much harder than I thought. He cut off contact with her, because once he told him he was married and wanted us both, she just ran away and broke up with him. There are times since then where my husband starts feeling sad or angry, because of what's basically withdrawal. And for that he's smart, at least sensible enough not to blame me. What kind of marriage did we had before this crisis? It will sound so naive. It's my first and only romantic relationship. We were very close and basically grew as adults together. We could talk about anything and understand each other. We shared the same values and interests. What changed, I think, is that we got into a routine and he got bored. During our argument he said he was addicted to the attention the girl was giving him, and that he felt I didn't show him I was in love with him enough anymore. I told him that even if it was true, he should have told me instead of having an affair. On one hand I have my faults too, and I could accept this as one of them. On the other, I was taking care of him in the house while he was sick. I don't think he believes it. I don't think he means it. But it makes me wonder whether I was actually a good wife for him, even though I am not responsible for his actions. Update 2. He begged me to try to reconcile with him, to which I agreed while I was actually trying to prepare my exit. We both went to individual therapy, still am. We separated temporarily 3 times, but every time I came back, it went terribly. He was desperate. He kept trying to cross my boundaries, love bombing me, playing the victim, asking to touch me even though I established I didn't want to, threatening to kill himself if we were to divorce. I could go on and on. This made me finally realize, along with my therapist's help, a lot of self-reflection in my exchanges on Reddit, that I was in an abusive relationship. Which is an important part, actually the most important part of this update. Please look up definitions and examples of abuse. Because I had no idea that what my husband had been doing all these years, even before the affair, counted as such. In his case, it was psychological abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, guilt tripping, blame shifting, emotional blackmail, nothing aggressive or mean. Which turned me into a very submissive partner over the years, always catering to his needs while erasing mine. I rationalized everything. It happened subtly and gradually, and I was too naive to see it for what it was. His emotional affair and open marriage proposal were the natural continuity of that. Of course, the more I tried to get away from him, the more manipulative he got. Now that I was aware of it, I knew what he was doing, but fighting years of conditioning, even if you recognize it and succeed, is exhausting and disarming. So earlier today I brought a friend home to assist me. We sat down, the three of us, and I told my husband we were over and I handed him the papers. It might sound dumb, but it's genuinely one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I was terrified. Yet he agreed. He repeatedly asked me if I was sure. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have and of our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently yes, he was heartbroken. Clearly mad and frustrated. But still, he agreed. He signed them and went back to his parents for now. We still have to go through the whole procedure, separate our assets, decide what to do with the house and all. And he still wants us to go to marriage counseling. But right now, I feel free. For the first time in months. The last hours have been a mix of tears, celebration and godly, restful sleep. And I have to thank you guys again. Because my first Reddit post was the wake-up call I needed to eventually, finally get here. Better late than never. Thank you so much. Update 3. After my soon-to-be ex-husband signed the divorce papers, we went no contact, or at least I tried to. He still sent me text messages, voice messages, and tried to call me multiple times. He even sent me a long letter full of statements such as, "I'm concerned that your mental health is deteriorating. I believe you need antidepressants to help you feel like yourself again." Or, "Your trauma is understandable, but it probably makes you want to punish me by making irrational decisions, like divorce." Or, "I am afraid you are surrounding yourself with questionable influences that have bad agendas. Please let me help you see it through." He claimed that the crisis was just as hard for him as it was for me. People told me he was escalating and that I should protect myself. I should have listened immediately, but I didn't react soon enough. Then he came to our street. He arrived uninvited and pleaded with me to give him a second chance. He said he wanted to be there for me and for us, insisting that he didn't deserve any of this. I started to feel distressed. He saw that I was unwell and wanted to comfort me, so he hugged me. But I didn't want to be touched. I'm pretty sure I told him no. I think I screamed no multiple times, but my memory is fuzzy. Either I misremember, or I did say no and he ignored it, and didn't stop. I know it's just a hug, but it triggered a severe panic attack. He called emergency services, telling them he was worried about me because I wasn't myself. I had to ask the paramedics to make him leave. After that, he told me he was there for me if I needed him, but he thought we needed space. He contacted half our social circle to inform them that I was unwell and needed support, our mutual friends, my colleagues, our neighbors, my physician. People reached out of the blue to ask if I was okay. I became paranoid, unsure of who to trust anymore. Close friends, my therapist, and people here helped me see things more clearly. My lawyer filed a restraining order against him, but unfortunately it was refused. Not enough concrete evidence of a threat. Apparently I want to scream. We submitted a second request, which is currently being reviewed. In the meantime, I've moved into an apartment of my own. He doesn't know where I live. Hell, almost nobody does. I constantly wonder how he reacted when he found out. I'm still paying my half of the mortgage, because nothing has been decided regarding our house yet. It's financially very hard for me, but I do feel safer. I am feeling much better, although I remain haunted by constant stress, sleep disorders, nightmares, nervous tics, random bursts of tears, and rushes of anxiety. My physician prescribed me sedatives. They do make it easier. I realize I'm isolating myself more and more. I try to fight it, but I'm really afraid that sensitive information could leak, even accidentally. I've started reaching out to my closest friends again, as much as I can. I am trying to come back here on Reddit. I keep going to therapy, it's necessary. Because one part of me, the part he cultivated for so long, urges me to stop all of this, to go back to the house, cancel the restraining order, cancel the divorce, call him, apologize, and repair our relationship. It would be insane. I am not going to do that. I do not listen to that little voice. I don't. But when your defenses are attacked over and over again, it becomes incredibly hard to reason properly. I can't wait for the divorce to be over. I just want to move on. I want all of this to be behind me. I'm sorry this is bleak. I wish I would have left sooner. I just hope this can help anyone. Now, for the next story. My boyfriend is upset that I'm thinking of breaking my vegetarianism for our week-long trip to Japan. I, 34 female, have been vegetarian for about 4 years. My boyfriend, 34 male, is a meat lover. He is an excellent cook and he loves steak and other types of meat. He's never asked me to start eating meat. I have never asked him to stop eating meat. I don't care what he eats, it's 100% his. And everyone else's choice. I don't talk about being vegetarian, don't promote it, and I try to figure out my own food if I need to so I don't inconvenience others. Sometimes it's hard to find a restaurant with a vegetarian choice besides a side salad, so I'll do the legwork to find a restaurant everyone will like. My choice to be vegetarian hasn't seemed to be an issue or cause any big inconvenience. But maybe I'm wrong. When I went on vacation with my boyfriend's family for a week, his mom revised her risotto recipe to use veggie broth instead of chicken broth, so I could eat it. I didn't ask, I think my boyfriend suggested it to her. I was really appreciative. When my boyfriend and I went on vacation for a week, we both looked up restaurants that would have a veggie option for me. We mostly ate at seafood places because of where we were vacationing, and I managed to find a veggie burger or something like that at most places. My take: I have a work trip to Japan coming up soon. I told my boyfriend I was considering eating meat during that week so I can fully experience the culture and food. That means sushi, wagyu, ramen, things like that. I'm not sure if I can actually get myself to eat meat during the trip, because I think I'll feel guilty about it. My choice to be veg is because I feel bad for how animals are raised, treated, farmed, and the nature of how they're usually killed. I know I can get humanely raised meat, but I choose to abstain altogether. I miss sushi and steak the most, but again I abstain. My boyfriend's take: he is upset that I would consider breaking vegetarianism for this week-long trip. But I wouldn't consider breaking vegetarianism to have a steak with him. It makes him feel like he's not worth it. It makes him feel like the trip and the coworkers I'm going on the trip with are more important than him. I know he bonds over sharing food with people he likes to cook for other people. And he's never been able to cook a steak for me, and we've never been able to share a steak dinner together. We've gone to steakhouses before, but I just eat whatever else they have. It's not the same as us both enjoying a steak. He also said that all the effort to accommodate me being vegetarian seems like a waste now, his mom going out of her way to make the risotto without chicken broth, looking up restaurants where I can eat something besides a salad. Him cooking stir-fry or other dishes, and leaving the meat separate on the flat-top grill, until I serve myself the veggies, and then after that he combines it all together with the meat, things like that. Me not being able to enjoy the best shrimp he's ever had on our vacation together. He was to the point of tears over us not being able to eat a steak together. I understand it would make him feel bad that I'd consider eating meat on the trip. But I haven't offered to eat a steak with him. I feel terrible for making him feel this way, and making him feel less important, or less worthy. I apologize for this and apologize for making him feel this way. I told him that's not it. It's not that he's not worthy. That this trip is probably once in a lifetime, and I'm afraid that if I have a steak here at home with him, I'm concerned it'll become a slippery slope. I told him I don't want to stop being vegetarian. How do I navigate this? Editing to add. When he told me how he felt about this, I listened. Apologized for making him feel so poorly and validated him. I understand why he feels bad. And I should have thought about how this might go before I said it, that I'm considering eating meat on the trip, out loud. During the conversation I thanked him for telling me how he was feeling and thanked him for telling me how important that would be to him. So I offered to have a steak with him, and I also let him know I don't want it to become a regular thing because I prefer to stay vegetarian, or mostly vegetarian, I guess, since having steak with him wouldn't be vegetarian. I know sharing meals together is important to him. It's also important to me. What I did not know, however, is that he was so badly wanting to have a steak together where I eat it too. When he cooks meat, I always comment on how good it looks and smells, and he has said before, "I wish you could taste this." In hindsight, that comment from him was probably hinting at him wishing I'd offer to eat a steak with him. He hasn't asked me, "Hey, can you please eat a steak with me tonight?" Or "Would you ever consider eating meat with me?" Or for me, if he asked me those questions and I said no, and then I said I'm considering eating meat in Japan, that would be a different conversation. I haven't rejected him that way. But I also haven't offered to eat steak with him either until this conversation came up. I didn't know this specific thing was something he wanted so badly. I thought because he eats meat as much as he wants and we eat many meals together that he was satisfied in this area. We've never been to a vegetarian restaurant together. I try to make my vegetarianism as small as possible. I don't want it to be a thing I bring food to his house. I get a side salad or kids' grilled cheese at restaurants that don't have any other veggie options. I don't make it a big deal. I completely understand why he feels bad. That's not what this post is about. I'm just wondering how to best move forward. I also just told him I was considering eating meat on that trip without thinking about it. First, I didn't think about how he'd feel slighted. I didn't think about how I'd feel guilty and anxious about the thought of actually going through with eating meat, etc. When we talked about it, I brought up that I'll have to slowly incorporate meat into my diet leading up to us having a steak together, or to going to Japan if I choose to eat meat on that trip. I know that's a thing. Considering how anxious I feel about actually thinking more about going through with eating meat, I think it's best for me to just not eat meat on the trip. But now I still have to figure out how to address the topic with my boyfriend, because now I know he wants me to eat steak with him, and I offered to do that for him. Comments. Comment 1. They're 34 from their communication and arguments. I thought they were like 19 to 20 in their first real relationship. This is ridiculous. Comment 2. The main thing I've learned from browsing Reddit is that lots of people have the worst relationships and just don't seem to see how truly awful they are. Why do people put up with this kind of crap? Crippling fear of loneliness. Low self-esteem? Addiction to drama? I understand tolerating a quantity of this nonsense when children are involved because you have to think how splitting up will affect them. But why do people tolerate this stuff when they have no kids and aren't even married? Perplexing. Update. During the 2 weeks leading up to me leaving for Japan, we got into a couple big arguments, and about 5 days before I left he told me he can't do it anymore. He can't take all the arguing. He's exhausted. I don't take responsibility for the things I'm doing wrong, and all I do is focus on what he's doing wrong. I don't talk enough about the things that I need to fix about myself. I don't talk about my insecurities enough. And I don't take enough responsibility for the ways I communicate poorly, and how that makes us fight. A little more context about the arguments. Argument 1. We had a talk one Sunday about how I was feeling. He could tell I was down and I told him I was feeling lonely. He asked how else I'd been feeling lately, and I shared that I've also been conflicted about some work stuff and some family and friend stuff. We didn't talk about the loneliness, just about the other things. He went into solution mode and was emotionless about it. It wasn't what I needed, but I went through that process with him first since he seemed determined to get to the bottom of it. Throughout the discussion, a couple things rubbed me wrong way. First, he told me he doesn't think I actually feel that way. And second, there was no empathy. When he was done leading that discussion, he asked me how I feel. I told him poorly. The first thing I shared is that it's disheartening when he asks me how I feel. I tell him how I feel, and then he replies with, "I don't think you feel that way." This isn't the first time this happened. Other times when he's asked me how I feel, or what I think about something, he's told me, "I don't believe you, I don't think you feel that way, it doesn't make sense to feel that way. I think you feel like that because of XYZ, not because of the reason I gave him." The second thing I shared is that I would have liked him to not only focus on analyzing the situation, and to say something empathetic like, "AW babe, that sucks, you feel so lonely." I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on? I told him I appreciated the solution mode discussion and that helped, and I also needed some empathy. He got quiet and his body language changed. I asked him if he's upset. He firmly replied, "Yeah, I'm upset." I asked why and he said, "Because I'm only focusing on the things he did wrong." He tried so hard to handle the situation well and he did everything else right. But all I told him is what he did wrong. I reminded him he did other things right. And I referenced back to other conversations where he has shared a grievance with me and I haven't given him what he wanted in the moment. He wanted more empathy, or more softness, for example. And he's quick to point it out and tell me what I'm not doing right, and what he needs from me. This conversation kind of ended after that. I brought it up again a week or so later and he said sorry for not handling it well. Argument 2. He told me he was making plans to watch a horror movie with his friend Aaron. They periodically watch movies together, just the two of them, and that's fine by me. However, this made me feel insecure this time because I don't feel like he gets excited to make plans with me, really tries to make or initiate plans with me besides just hanging out at home or something, or saying we should go to the brunch place we like nearly every weekend. Anyway, I got really quiet and started tearing up in the moment. And I was trying to process how I felt and figure out if it's worth bringing up, or if I just need to handle it on my own and not tell him how I was feeling. Because I know it's an insecurity of mine. He asked me what's wrong and I decided this is benign enough to talk about. I told him this made me feel really insecure. He told me it doesn't make sense for me to feel that way, I shouldn't feel that way, and he's never done anything to make me feel that way. I explained myself and explained why. He loves horror movies and I want him to want to share that with me and I feel insecure about it. If the rest of our relationship was healthy, this probably would not have made me feel poorly. But I had been feeling not really wanted for a while, so this kind of tipped the scale. He persisted that it doesn't make sense for me to feel this way and listed reasons why I shouldn't feel that way. Eventually he said okay and he understood what I was saying. He asked me if I felt heard and I said yeah, I think so. Then he wanted a chance to say his perspective. He went right into how it doesn't make sense for me to feel that way, why I shouldn't feel that way, and that he's never done anything to make me feel that way. I got so frustrated, because that contradicted what I thought we just resolved when he said he understood my feelings. He got upset because I was bothered about it again after I just told him I felt heard. He said he wanted softness from me and I wasn't receiving him well. We went back and forth after that, me trying to explain why his responses to me were bothering me, and him insisting the same things again. It never got resolved. Argument 3. I was leaving for Japan on a Friday night. My flight was at like 7 p.m. That same day he was going to drive about an hour away to spend the weekend with his best friend. We talked a few weeks prior and I said I wasn't going to work that day so I could prepare for the trip. And we agreed we'd hang out that day, but never firmed up any plans or times. We went out to dinner and I asked him what time he was planning to leave on Friday to drive to his friend's house. It was a genuine question with no feelings or anything attached. He replied between 3 and 5 p.m. I don't know what I was expecting him to say, but when he told me 3 to 5, I realized I felt bad, because I wanted him to want to spend that time with me leading up to my flight, and maybe take me to the airport or something. I never expressed this to him previously. We didn't talk about it yet. But in that moment I told him I felt unconsidered, and I wished he would have considered me. I screwed up because I should have told him I wanted to hang out leading up to my flight instead of saying I felt unconsidered, but at the same time I don't know if I would have felt comfortable telling him that, because it would interfere with his friend time and change his plans. I'm not sure how he would have received that. Maybe well, maybe not. He got really upset. I tried explaining why I felt unconsidered, and immediately his body language changed. He pushed himself back in his chair a little, made this smirk, scoffed, and started interrupting me. I got frustrated and heated, and told him not to interrupt me when I was trying to explain my feelings. And I can see he's about to get defensive. I was definitely triggered by his change in demeanor, and his attempt to interrupt me. I thought to myself, not again. Not this time. Stand up for yourself and make sure you get to share your feelings. He got even more upset that I assumed he was going to get defensive, and he got upset I wouldn't let him interrupt me. He said he did consider me. His plan to leave between 3 and 5 wasn't firm, and if I just let him interrupt me, this big fight wouldn't have happened. He said my feelings weren't appropriate, because they were based on an incorrect assumption I made. The assumption I made was that he didn't consider me, and that his plans to leave between 3 and 5 were firm. He told me he just pulled that time frame out of the air and it wasn't firm. He didn't have dinner plans with his friend yet, so it was all flexible. When he explained himself, I thanked him for explaining it. I apologized for assuming he didn't consider me, and I told him I see his perspective. He was really upset with me though. So he explained again why what I did wasn't okay. It wasn't okay that when I assumed he didn't consider me. 2, I said, I wish you would have considered me. 3, I called out his body language. And 4, I assumed he was going to get defensive. Side note, me saying I wish you would to him is a no-no. Because it makes him feel awful. So I have worked hard to not use that phrase with him. I failed this time. I explained that those were my feelings based on the information I had at the time, and even though they were based on wrong information, it's still okay for me to tell him how I feel first. And then he can set the record straight. Then he can say something like, oh, these plans aren't actually firm. Sorry you didn't feel considered. The plans are flexible, and I can say, okay, sorry for assuming that. I'd like to hang out up until I go to the airport. That didn't work for him. He insisted that if I just let him interrupt me, none of this would have happened. I ended up reiterating his point and apologizing 3 times. Also, over the summer, something similar happened with the roles reversed. He assumed something incorrect, and he was upset about it. And I interrupted him to tell him what the correct information was, and he told me I need to hear him out first before I chime in with the correct information. Because his feelings are still his feelings and they should be heard. It's hard to do, but I agreed. So I brought up that conversation as justification for why I should be allowed to tell him how I feel before he interrupts me. He still wanted to interrupt me because my assumption was wrong. Then he got upset that I changed my stance so quickly. When he told me the plans were flexible, I apologized for assuming he didn't consider me, and I told him, okay, I understand. That works for me. He said he feels crazy when this happens, when I feel bad about something. He explains his side. And then I say, okay, I understand, and I let my original feelings go and I side with him. He said that I'm gaslighting him because it seems like a big deal to me. Then he gets worked up, and then I back down. I tried to explain that it's normal and healthy for someone to be told new information, and then take that information into consideration, and change their approach. It's healthy for me to hear him out and say, yeah, I made an assumption and I shouldn't feel bad about this anymore. Anyway, he was really upset with me all night. The whole fight was because of my poor communication. When we woke up the next morning, I thought he was going to apologize to me. Apparently, he thought I was going to apologize to him. That's when he told me it's over. He broke up with me. I'm back from the Japan work trip. I didn't eat meat or seafood on the trip. I did have some soups made with fish broth since that was tough to avoid, and that made me feel sick, but overall it went very well. I'm struggling now with the breakup.